a short time ago, President Trump dropping a climate deal bombshell.
As of today, the United States will cease all implementation of the non-binding Paris Accord and the draconian financial and economic burdens the agreement imposes on our country. This includes ending the implementation of the nationally determined contribution and, very importantly, the Green Climate Fund, which is costing the United States a vast fortune.
I'm not very surprised by this at all.
No one should be. Donald Trump candidate ran on the anti-globalist agenda. This, by definition, is a globalist idea, the Paris Climate Accord, 195 countries. And we're going to get into the specifics of it in a couple of minutes, but no one should be surprised that. And don't be surprised also the coincidence of a brand new stock market high on the very day that we pull out, because pulling out of the Paris Accord is very, very good for American business. We can argue whether he should get back in with a better deal or not, but certainly business leaders feel optimistic that this is a good idea for the country.
I think get back in with a better deal, but involving Congress, as you would with a treaty, which essentially is what this was, even though technically not, should have been always treated that way. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think most people would agree with you there. Here's the thing. I'm not bothered at all by this. This is exactly what he ran on. Eric's right. And even those that question, you know, Donald Trump and his issues with climate change or whatever, the point is the deal itself wasn't good. Every deal is not good. And I think a lot of people don't really wrap their heads around that because the idea of a deal sounds like a good thing. It sounds positive and productive, but a deal's only as good as the terms it's based on. And this one has unenforceable, bad terms that are not productive for American citizens.
All right, well, let's meet today's specialists. She is a New York Times bestseller, she's a Fox News contributor, and she's editor for townhall.com, but she specializes in hunting and rafting on the Colorado River. Katie Pavlich is here. And he is the 1987 Brooklyn Spelling Bee champion, the subject of the graphic novel Ego and Hubris, and he's a columnist for The Observer, but he specializes in North Korea. That's right, he's the author of Dear Reader, the unauthorized autobiography of Kim Jong-il. Michael Malice is here also. All right, Katie, a lot of people are saying that the whole world is now going to be on fire. Do you think that that's true?
No, it is not. The hysteria surrounding the United States leaving the Paris Climate Accord really is incredible, especially considering all of the hysteria we've seen so far with the Trump administration. We have commentators at different networks saying this is the day that the United States stepped back and is no longer the leader of the free world. You have Tom Steyer, who of course is a big climate change proponent, saying that the president has committed an act of treason against the American people for pulling out of this accord. That's not true. And when you look at the details of what this agreement would have required, you know, 400,000 manufacturing jobs in this country gone, not to mention maybe millions potentially down the road. A decrease of $20,000 per family of four in terms of household income. $3 trillion of lost GDP, according to the agreement. And the issue also is the international community seems very upset that we're leaving. Well, what if the United States pulls out? Well, then other countries might pull out. Well, first of all, that shows that we're still leaders in the world, number one. And second of all, the United States for a very long time has been the funder of pet projects and slush funds for the international community that actually don't do a lot of good and don't handle the problem that it's supposed to. I think that the president sent that message on the campaign trail that those days are over, and this is the first step to stop American taxpayer funding to go towards one of those slush funds that really wasn't going to solve the problem of climate change.
Right, absolutely. And again, climate change, I am someone who certainly believes that it's real. I just really don't buy into the idea that regulations are always the answer. I'm more one of those market people. I think things like property rights could get involved. And also, you can't have all these regulations if you want to create new businesses, and that includes businesses that are green energy. So I would like to see there be some sort of deal, though, Eric. Something you said was if we get back in, I would like to see there be some sort of deal, but following the proper channels of a treaty.
Let's just talk a little bit. Katie points out that both the Heritage Foundation and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimate the GDP loss somewhere around $2.5 or $3 trillion over 10 years. That is substantial. But here's why. I mean, let me explain exactly why it costs us GDP. When a lot of this is focused on the automobile industry. So all these car companies are being told they have to increase CAFE standards. It's their miles per gallon standards. So they're forced to make a lighter and lighter car. Costs a lot more money to use aluminum in a car than steel. So it costs them more. That goes on to the consumer. But also these cars are less safe. So the insurance costs are going up to consumers as well. Also, natural gas is being forced. Now, if under the Accord, we'd have to pollute less, so we'd have to move away from coal, which is one of our cheapest, most abundant fuel sources in America, into a more expensive fuel source. That means our electric bills are going to go up as well. As these costs are translated to the consumer, GDP goes down. You have less money in your pocket.
But Michael, I want to get Michael in this too, but here's my thing, Eric. I don't mind it being more expensive because I think to do the right thing by our system, our ecosystem, it's going to maybe be more expensive. That's not even my problem with the deal. You know what it is? It's not enforceable. Those that don't agree to it, those that violate the terms of this agreement, how are you going to enforce it? It's the same
we're
problem.
the kind of country that ends up actually following through on it.
We were going to eat most of the cost of, or a big portion of the cost of this, as I think we're the third largest polluter, second or third largest polluter, the largest polluter. China gets to continue to pollute more and more and more for 13 years going forward.
But I do think it's
insane.
I do think it's important, Michael, to show that we do still care about this. We don't want to completely abandon looking after clean energy, green energy, because that is where the rest of the world is going. If we just want to stick with coal, we'll be by ourselves sticking with coal, and that's not a good thing.
Well, we're by ourselves using feet and yards, and that's pretty fine with me. See, I agree with Katie. This isn't about leadership. This is about obedience and submission of the American government, the American people, to a new world order. Now, here's how I determine what the facts are here. If you look at markets, price determines information. If aluminum goes up, that means there's either less demand, there's more demand, or less supply. If you look at all these predictions, they say that we're all going to be underwater, and we should have been underwater in the 90s. If this was all true, beachfront property prices would be collapsing, because all those people in the real estate industry would be selling, because they're thinking the long game, and they're like, well, this is going to be worth in 20 years, and we're not seeing that. So I trust the people
The views are too nice.
I trust people who have skin in the game, not the coal industry people, and certainly not people who want the government to control every aspect of our lives. Listen, if you agree with the French proposals, put on a beret, go to Calais and pay 85% of your income to the French government.
Understand this also. Elon Musk said that if we pulled out of the Paris Accord, that he was going to pull himself off of some of the advisory boards that he's on with the Trump administration. Think about that for a second. The guy who runs an electric car company, owns an electric car company, subsidized largely by the U.S. taxpayer, no less, wants us to move away from fossil fuel generated burning cars right into his showroom. Buy one of our Teslas.
And that goes to exactly the point.
But talk about this though. How do you produce electricity?
Well, it goes exactly
with
through coal, right? Yeah. Exactly. But that goes exactly to the point of: is he really interested in the environment and clean energy, or is he interested in getting rich in electric cars because it benefits him? If he was really interested in helping the environment, which I think there are a lot of people in the Trump administration who are. America, by the way, is going to decrease its emissions without the Paris Accord. We have decreased our emissions more than any other country in the world. But if he really cared about the environment, he would stay as an advisor despite not getting his way on the Paris Climate Agreement.
A bit of a conflict, I agree with you there, Katie. And also, because the deal itself just bugs me in the same way that the Iran deal bugged me. It's a bad deal. Good mission, good intentions, bad, unenforceable terms of the deal. France, Germany, and Italy already saying that the deal, quote, cannot be renegotiated. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Every deal can, by definition, be renegotiated.
Should we touch on one other thing? Who signed this deal? Who thought it was a great idea for us to reduce our emissions by 28%, pay the vast majority of the money that's going, a transfer of wealth from us to developing nations? Who did that? President Obama. Thank you, sir. One more thank you, President Obama.
All right. Okay. Well, not surprisingly, the media are pouncing on the irreparable damage they claim the president will cause by pulling out of the climate deal. Take a listen.
With the U.S. pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, scientists are in agreement, or a majority of them anyway, that we are going to see temperatures rise. Let's first look scientifically what that means. Well, rising seas. We could see the seas continue to rise, and we could see flooding in major cities such as New York City to Shanghai. Deadlier heat waves would be more abundant. We'd see droughts, wildfires, mass extinction in the natural world. Ecosystems would be disrupted. Coral reefs would bleach out in the oceans. And get this, Jake, low-lying countries such as the Marshall Islands would disappear entirely.
Ebony, he's saying this about the deal. We're talking about a deal. We're not talking about ultimately actions or what's ultimately going to happen in terms of emissions and regulations. We're talking about a specific deal. Without this specific deal, all that's going to happen, I feel like no.
And if you listen to him, it sounds like it's the rapture. You're expecting half the people just vanish from the face of the earth. We've been hearing these predictions for at least 30 years. None of this has happened, and at no point are they like, wait a minute, maybe we got something wrong. The idea that climate change is automatically man-made, and the idea that it's automatically a catastrophe are two logical leaps that they're making whenever you talk about this issue.
I feel like I was watching Jack Van Impe for a while.
Let's slow it down, though, Mike. So I agree. That's a bit far of a leap. But obviously, I do think there are things we can and should be doing to be more responsible consumers of our earth and globe. But that everybody, I think we're all in agreement here, that is very different than applauding this as a good deal.
And let me make one more point. If Trump pulled out of the agreement and said unilaterally we're still going to meet these goals, he would still get attacked because what they really want is for the U.S. to have some kind of international consensus as opposed to us doing anything of our own volition.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't mind us having consensus personally, but not when it doesn't have an actual benefit.
You have to look at the end result. Is the Paris Climate Accord actually going to reduce the Earth's temperature by 4 degrees? Absolutely not. And this idea that they have all these predictions, which I was confused, was that Al Gore or was that an anchor from another network there? All those predictions I'm pretty sure I saw Al Gore make in 2002 when his film that came out, An Inconvenient Truth, that was completely debunked yet used in classrooms across the country to sell climate change. As you said, in the 80s and the 70s, we were told that the Earth was going to freeze. He was talking about rising sea levels. I'm from Arizona. Arizona used to be under an ocean. You can find seashells at the top of the Grand Canyon. Yes, the climate changes. It's been changing for a very, very long time. Yes, man may have some kind of impact on it, but to act like some international community is going to use American taxpayer dollars to reduce the Earth's temperature by 4 degrees is a fantasy land, and I'm glad that the president is not behind.
But if you want to play fantasy land, that's fine. And if you have you'll get behind a president that says, let's do this fantasy land, but as long as everyone is playing with the same set of rules. In other words, we can't be forced into $3 trillion of reduced GDP while China continues to eat our lunch in business, in manufacturing, and put us at a competitive disadvantage to China when they're going to be allowed. Think about this. They're the #1 polluter on the planet. They're going to be allowed to increase their pollution for 13 more years. We're required to pull back or we're fined.
There's a difference between pollution and climate change. And I think they mix the two. Nobody wants to be a polluter. No one wants to be a polluter. We can reduce pollution, but this idea of climate change embodying everything doesn't really add up.
And to Eric's point, even when China does continue to do that, even if the day comes where they're restricted, how do we enforce that? It's an unenforceable deal. And
well, this deal didn't have any enforcement mechanisms in it.
That's
so maybe some of those would have been a good start for that. Okay.